G'day, it's Gus Gould here, host of Not an Overnight Success, the only podcast in the world that gives every guest $10,000 to give away to a charity of their choice. Today, it's Gus Gould, a guy that I've known for many, many years, but this chat, I've never seen him more vulnerable, more lighthearted, talking about his family, having so much fun. He's normally sort of has a reputation of being a little bit grouchy, but this was a really fun chat with Gus. I hope you enjoy it.
Now, it's Phil Gould, but you're called Gus. Why are you called Gus and not Phil?
A footy mate gave me that. The nicknames were all the rage back when I was playing footy back in the 70s. And, good football mate gave me that nickname. Ken Wilson passed away recently. We were playing at Newtown at the time. We were actually on a road run around Coogee. It was a road run where the forwards took off first and then the backs took off second. So, of course, the first forward that they caught up to was me as we're going up Beach Street Hill there at Coogee. And I was struggling a bit because we'd been out the night before. So as I was doing that, I think the 373 to Clovelly bus was driving up the hill and Kenny said, "Get on the bus, Gus."
That's great. Yeah. And did you?
No, I didn't. No, I stuck it out. And the name stuck. So
of course, it's great.
Gus ever since. Yeah.
Yes. So Gus, Phil Gould is the child. Where did you grow up? What was your family like?
Crikey, long time ago now. My family life was perfect. I really, couldn't have been any better. I had great parents and I had one brother who was a couple of years younger than me. Dad was a policeman. In the early years, he worked at Newtown Police Station for 16 years. And around that time, his station sergeant gave him somewhere to stay, which was a little one-man police station at Cooks River down at Tempe. Still there. It's on the Princess Highway there at Tempe. It had 2 bedrooms and 2 jail cells. Is where I lived the first 5 years of my life.
Okay. Did you get a bedroom or would you have to lob into the cell?
I only vaguely remember parts of it, but there was a bedroom for me and my brother and a bedroom for mum and dad and 2 jail cells. And I can remember Dad bringing drunks home and throwing them in the slammer for the night to cool off. And the Newtown Police Station, and a lot of the Newtown first grade footballers were policemen in those days. A fellow by the name of Brian Chickamore, who played for Australia, went on a kangaroo tour. Dad's partner. They often had to go out and deal with rowdy people at the local establishments. And some they had to arrest and bring home, and they come and put them in a slammer for the night rather than charge them with anything and let them go the next morning. Yeah, but that's the first 5 years, and he got it rent free, and that's how he saved up for Mum and Dad's first block of land, which was out at Marylands. So at the age of 5 in 1963, we moved to the western suburbs of Sydney, Marylands, and that's where we grew up. And my mother dedicated herself as a housewife. She was a school teacher, I think, by education, but her mother was a school teacher. But she was a stay-at-home mum and looked after us, and that was it. It was all sport and more sport, and that was it, friends and sport. That's what I remember in my childhood.
You got a big smile on your face when you talk about your mum and dad and so forth, and, a simple but just lovely childhood.
Yeah, brilliant, yeah. Couldn't have wanted for anything. Dad passed away about 8 years ago. He had 10 years with dementia, which was, it's a terrible time. Mum's just about to turn 90. She's had a rough 12 months. She fell and broke her hip. She's living on her own at home, and then she races to the phone the other night and falls over and breaks her wrist. So she's back in
hospital again?
She went and got her arm set. But she doesn't, when she broke her hip, I go out every Sunday. And sit with her, and we have some lunch, and we watch the cricket or the football, whatever's on. That's where I go and see Mum. And when I was working at Penrith, I used to call around. She lives out at Cobbity. I used to call around a couple more times a day, but I definitely get out there at least once a week to see her. And I went out this Sunday, and she was sitting. She said, "I can't make your lunch today. I'm a bit sore." She was sitting in a chair, and I said, "Oh, right, that's okay." So no worries. And I went and got lunch and did everything like that. And when I come back a week later, she hadn't moved. And I said, "Have you been out of that chair?" She said, "I can't." And I said, "Why?" She said, I had a fall. She didn't tell us for a week. So they're still at Campbelltown Hospital talking about the old lady who walked in with no hip. She'd actually broken the ball off the hip joint, falling over. And, so she was in hospital. She went into hospital for 4 months. She got COVID, she got infections, she got rashes, she got everything you could possibly get while she's trying to rehab from this hip. But we finally got her home. She's very independent. She lives on her own.
Yeah, she sounds like it. So she went into hospital with one thing and came out and had to deal with 4 or 5.
Well, the longer she stayed there, the sicker she got.
Right.
And in the end, they wanted to put her in a home. I said, and she got all panicked. I said, "Mum, you're not going into a home. I promise you're not going into a home." And I said to them, "I'm checking her out." because I just felt that a lot of the things she was getting was because she was in the hospital you know, and constantly on medication and everything. So we got her out, and she's been as good as gold ever since. So.
Yep. Back home where she's safe and feels
Yeah, she
comfortable.
lives in a little retirement village, but she's got her own home. Like, she lives in her own space there, and she's got some nice ladies who live in the houses next door. So
That's nice.
it's nice and social for her. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I get out to see her every Sunday. My brother and his kids live in the area, so they get around to see her if she needs anything. But yeah, she's still kicking. Going okay.
I was going to ask you about your brother. So he was a little bit younger than you?
2 years younger, yeah.
2 years younger. And were you great mates? Did you used to fight? Was sport the thing that bonded you together? What was your relationship like with your brother?
All of that. Yeah, we were different in a lot of ways, and John was asthmatic as a kid, so he's restricted in his sports. He played cricket and golf, and when he played soccer, he had to be the goalkeeper, and that's where he was. Where my sporting life was a little bit different to that, but. Yeah, and he ended up a school teacher. He became a school teacher like Mum, and then he ended up managing clubs. He worked in the hospitality industry. When I was in the 80s, I was working in the poker machine industry, and John gravitated into the hospitality industry, and then he went to work for the same poker machine company that I was working, and he still works in gaming and hospitality today and travels around the world looking after casinos and all sorts of things, so he's doing really well.
Good on him.
Yeah, good.
And he's had kids?
Yeah. I don't have grandkids. He's got plenty of grandkids.
Yeah. Do you want grandkids?
Well, I haven't discussed that with them. I don't
Not
know.
yet.
I don't know that I've got any intention. I've got to be honest. I've got two beautiful daughters and a son. They're all in their early 20s. But yeah, unless there's an accident, I can't see it happening anytime soon.
Well, I've got three. I've got a son and two daughters, and 23 to 20, and I'm very happy to shoulder arms on being a granddad for a few years yet.
Yeah, I don't know how much time I got left, so I'm not forcing them into it. But I think my wife would love to have grandkids. But,
Yes.
No, I don't see it on the horizon, I've got to be honest.
That's good. Okay, so let's rewind it back again. So you're having a happy life. You're going through, sport seems a big thing. You've mentioned that already, not just rugby league, obviously. So what was other sports, and were you any good at them?
Cricket. I was a better cricketer than a footballer. Played a lot of cricket as a kid.
Batsman, bowler, all-rounder?
Yeah, pretty much everything.
Okay.
Yeah, wicket keeper. I actually, at 14 years of age, I played A grade with Dad, so I got picked in the local A grade team. Dad was playing cricket.
What was that like, playing with your old man at that age?
Yeah, incredible. Well, it's incredible to think about it now. You don't really realise it at the time, how, which is the same with a lot of your life. You don't realise you're going through the best time of your life when you are.
Yeah.
And, it was quite remarkable. And I remember the day he gave me the wicket-keeping gloves, because he was the team wicket-keeper.
Oh.
And he gave them to me when I was 15. And I played A grade with the Wentworth Waratahs out there in the Golden West. And,
Can you remember how you went that first game, Gus?
No, not offhand. But I was a pretty fair cricketer. I played a lot of junior rep cricket. I played men's, and I was playing men's cricket at like 12 years of age. So I'd play boys cricket in the morning and come home and then go have lunch and go out and play with the men in the afternoon.
Oh, best Saturday ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I could just get home in time to watch World Championship Wrestling, which was on at midday.
So that was your in-between?
That was it,
Chuck a bit of sandwich in and then out again?
A couple of banana sandwiches and out to go again, yeah. Out in the heat. No sunscreen.
No. That's the way it was.
That's the way it was.
A bit of copper tone on and away you go.
That's it, yeah.
So,
a bit of zinc on the nose.
Yeah, of course. Whatever Dennis Lilly was wearing, I suppose,
exactly.
or one of the chapels. So cricket was your thing in the summer?
Yep.
And then rugby and rugby league, or just rugby league in the winter?
Played soccer as a kid.
Okay.
Mum said rugby league was too dangerous. That's back in the 60s. So I was the kid in the soccer team who brought the rugby league ball to training. So when I remember my first soccer coach, Mr. Barsler, he used to get and shake his head because he was an avid football fan, and I was pretty good at it. And he, but he would get so frustrated because when he got there, I'd have them all playing touch footy. So, anyway, after a few years, he said, "Mate, rugby league's down the road. You're gonna have to go down there."
Yeah. See you, brother.
We're trying to play soccer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So rugby league then became your passion, or just something you love to do?
No, I love to do it. I played at school, and then I eventually went to Wentworth Leagues Club, which is a big club out west out there, and played there in my teen years. When we got through to sixth form, which is year 12, back in the old days we called it sixth form. That was your final year where you do your HSC.
Yeah, that was me too. I left 86, so we're still doing that then.
Yeah, so in 1975 was when I went to fifth form, I kind of got distracted a little bit and I didn't concentrate too well. So Mum and Dad barred me from any sport in my sixth form year.
Oh.
I wasn't allowed to play any sport.
How'd that go down?
I had to concentrate to do my HSC because the HSC is everything. Like if you fail the HSC, you'll never get a job. You know what it was like back in the old days, you know.
Yeah.
So, and was a lot of pressure on. So, yeah, they wouldn't let me play sport in 1975 because I had to concentrate and get my HSC, which was fine because luckily enough schoolwork came easy to me and I got really good results. But, yeah, so I didn't play sport that year.
That would have been really hard for you. That would have been your opportunity to be the leader, to be captain, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, it was, yeah. A lot of my mates that I'd sort of grown up with until year 10, which was fourth forms, because in the old days, people that leave in fourth form, they go and get a trade and an apprenticeship or go and work at the abattoirs or go on the dole, whatever it was they were doing, you know, and Mum and Dad made me go on to fifth and sixth form, and there was only a handful of us in our school. Like, there weren't that many that went on to those years. Most people left in year 10 or fourth form.
Okay.
So most of the blokes that I've been hanging around with left. So I had to make a new group of friends at school for those final couple of years, which is why I was a bit recalcitrant in the first year because all my mates were out doing things and I was still at school.
Yeah, you wanted to be with them.
I wanted to be with them, and I was regularly.
Right.
Until I got caught. And then, so it was the only time wasn't the only time I got caught out of the crease, but sixth form they made me stay and concentrate, so I had to stay and concentrate.
And you said you were good at school, so could you have gone on to uni if you wanted to?
Well, I did go on to uni.
Okay, so what happened then?
So I qualified for uni. So sixth form finishes, and Dad said, "Are you going to go to uni?" I said, "No, I'm not going to uni." And he said, "All right, well, you can start work." And he got me a job the next day. So I finished my sixth form exams, and the next day I'm working at Regent's Park at a place called Bailey Meter as a trainee accountant.
Oh.
So I had 2 shirts, 2 pair of pants and 1 tie, and it all matched so I could just have a different outfit every day. And I had my car and I'd drive from home to Bailey Meter, and I became a trainee accountant. So my first job was in the warehouse, goods receivables. So I'd have to book in all the goods and take it around to the accountant and then get it ready so that we could pair invoices and pay invoices and all this sort of thing. And I used to sit there every day, and the head accountant was a fellow called Billy Brunt, lovely old man. But Billy Brunt would come to work all day, the head accountant, and he would sit in his office and he wouldn't move all day. And at lunchtime, he'd open up a couple of sandwiches that he'd made at home before he came to work or his wife had made for him, and he'd eat his lunch at the desk, and he'd sit there all day ticking and flicking with a red and green pen. And I said, I don't want to be an accountant. So I went back after a couple of months. I said to Dad, I think I'll go to uni. He said, all right, we can quit work and go to uni, which I did. I had a couple of months off. I was going to start university in March, doing commerce law at the University of New South Wales. And in February, I'm on a fishing trip with my mate down the south coast of Bateman's Bay. And Dad rings where I was staying, because I was staying with friends, and says, I've got you a trial at the Penrith Panthers. I said, what for? He said, rugby league. I said, why? He said, oh, well, I think you should play rugby league. He said, you're pretty good at it. He said, we didn't let you play last year. I've got you a trial at the Penrith Panthers. And I said, why the Penrith Panthers? Because in those days I was a Parramatta junior, but they were tied juniors. You could play for either. He said, I don't think you'd make the Parramatta team. He said, they won the comp last year. And that was his reasoning. But Mum and Dad had sort of come from our Penrith way. Dad had grown up at Wallachia and Mum had lived at Penrith and St Mary's in the area. So they had a bit of an attachment to the area. So he, the secretary at the time was a fellow called Ron Workman. He said, I've run Ron Workman, he said, and there's a trial for you this weekend. So I had to drive home from Bateman's Bay to go to this trial. And I hadn't played for 18 months when I get to the trial.
Great preparation.
Yeah, so the trial was on a Saturday. It was about 100 degrees. And I started off in the first trial of the day in a long-sleeve brown jersey. And out I went. Anyway, they kept taking me off in one trial and putting me on in the next and put me on. I ended up playing in 5 trials. Stinking hot day. I couldn't move for a week. So when the trials were over, I jumped in the car and drove back to Bateman's Bay to resume the fishing trip.
That's how much thought you gave it.
Yeah, and on the Monday night, Dad rang. He said, "You made grade." I said, "What's that?" And he said, "You've made the under-23s." I said, "And?" He said, "You've got to be at training Tuesday night." So
back down from Bateman's Bay.
I had to drive back from Bateman's Bay to go to training Tuesday night. And
was that exciting, Gus, to get that call?
Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't really get what it meant. You know, I thought, well, how long will this last? You know, I'm like 18 and playing under 23s. Like, it's a fair age gap. You know?
Yeah.
And I was playing virtually against men back in those days. So I didn't play any of the junior rep football or junior pathways football because I didn't play football, when I was 17. I pulled out of all those sides. So, it was an awesome experience. Penrith was a young club back in those days. I'd only been in the competition about 8 or 9 years. And they had some couple of English internationals playing for them, Mick Stevenson and Bill Ashurst, and Dave Topless was playing with the club at the time. So it was a great place to be. Built lifelong friends out of it, and a lifelong attachment, obviously, to the Panthers. So,
of course.
Yeah.
And you've been in rugby league pretty much from that time your dad got you the trial.
Exactly. That's where it started, and it hasn't stopped. I keep waiting for someone to tap me on the shoulder and say it's over. But no one has yet. I tell people I haven't planned a thing my whole life. Nothing's been a plan.
Right.
The plan was not to go to uni, and
you went to uni.
I went to work and decided I wasn't going to do that. So I went to uni, and I did well at uni for the first couple of years, but by 1978, so I went to uni in 76, 77, and I pretty much passed everything the first couple of years. And then by 1978, I'm playing first grade football, and I'm captain of the Panthers at 20 years of age, and training and playing at Penrith, and I'm going to university at the University of New South Wales at Randwick, which is a long way from Penrith.
Yeah.
I'm working 3 or 4 nights a week at Rydex Servicemen's Club on Victoria Road, behind the bar or on the door.
So no money for you to play as a Panther? That's why you needed the other job, or just not enough?
Well, no, there was no money. But the first year I didn't even know you got paid. So at the end of the year, I got a cheque for $370. And I said, what's this? I said, it's your match payments.
Oh.
I think we were on $20 a win and $10 a loss in the under-23s. And I think it was $40 a win and $20 a loss in the reserve grade. And the first grade was like $200 a win and $40 a loss. And I got one first grade game that year. They sent me on at half time in a game. So we lost, unfortunately, so I didn't get the 200. But yeah, but at the end of the year, they gave me a cheque for $370. And I said, what's that for? They said, you got match payments. I said, I didn't know you got paid. Yeah,
wow.
I had no idea you got
just
paid
a
for
bonus.
it. Yeah, it's just a bonus. Yeah. The second year, when they went to pay me, I owed them money because I went on the trip away. And yeah. I dropped out of uni. Always thought I'd go back to it, but I dropped out of uni by 1978, 79. And then,
was that a tough decision?
Not for me. Was for Mum. I dropped out long before she found out.
Okay.
Yeah. So
right.
yeah,
she just wanted you to complete it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to be an accountant or a lawyer or something reputable, not a footballer.
Yeah. Right.
Mum's, she's never forgiven me, still tells me today. Yeah, so, but, it's worked out all right. So
it has worked out all right.
I'm happy.
One thing that does sort of jump out when I think of your career is leadership at quite a young age. Why do you think people looked at you and saw you as someone that could lead?
I don't know. I was a school captain, pretty much captain of most teams I played with. I don't know. I don't know. I think I probably got that from my father. He was a policeman, obviously, as I've said before, and I don't know. I don't know why it started, but I guess once you're in that, it sort of just works upon itself over a period of time, and you learn confidence, and you learn to be able to communicate, and you learn, not that you learn it all at a young age, but sort of just over experience in a period of time. So it's just sort of become a part of what I did, or what I was recognised as, or what people entrusted me to do over a period of time, I guess. Sometimes I've been good at it, sometimes I've been pretty poor at it, but that's just life's experiences, isn't it?
It certainly is. Yeah. So you're a leader at a young age, like you said, at 20 years of age at the Panthers. But when you move from the Panthers, is leadership a part of that discussion when you eventually leave there?
No, I left. I got recruited by Newtown, a bloke called Warren Ryan. 1978, at the end of the 1978 season, I had a bit of a setback. I went half blind in my right eye, and we sort of didn't know what it was. And Dad took me to the eye hospital, Sydney Eye Hospital, to go and get it checked out. He was a bit worried about what it was. And in the end, they found that I had a detached retina, which back in those days was a pretty big injury. And in fact, they'd gone all day until they'd got a specialist in to actually look at it. And your eyes are all dilated, you can't see anything, and he said, we've found what it is, it's a detached retina, we can put you in tonight and fix that. I said, all right, so what's that mean? Oh, no, it's good, your eyesight will be okay, you'll just never be able to play sport again. And I said, say what? And he said, you'll just never be able to play sport again. I said, no, can't have that. And he's, well, no, that's what it is. I said, well, no, let me out. He said, well, you can't go anywhere. Your eyes are dilated. He said, when we've booked you in, you can't leave. And I said, well, I need a phone. So I rang Dad, who was at the police academy by this stage at Redfern. He was running the police academy. So he came down in the police car and charged in and arrested me and took me out. And as luck would have it, he had a police partner who had dealt with a matter where a young boy had accidentally been shot in the eye with a bow and arrow and injured his eye. And they'd flown up this eye specialist from Canberra, a bloke by the name of Leo Shanahan, to treat this boy and get him right. And we luckily got an appointment with this Leo Shanahan. He was in town. And we went to his, I think he was in Annandale there somewhere. And we went to his surgery and he had a look at it. He said, yeah, you've detached your retina. They've got that right. He said, look, the general thinking is that you can't go back to contact sport, but, I'm doing a new wave of sort of surgeries on this, and I think that I can get that back on, and hopefully we can get you back playing in the next 6 months, So I had 6 months out. I started the 1979 season really well, and we played against Newtown at Henson Park, and I had a pretty good game that day. And after the game, Warren Ryan came and saw me, and he said, how would you like to come and play for Newtown? I said, oh, that'd be good. No one had ever asked me to move to another team because they were going to pay me money to do it. I wasn't on much money at Penrith,
Yeah.
I said, but, I love Penrith, and I don't know, I'll have a think about it. Well, 2 weeks later, I did my eye again for a second time, and they said, this time, that's it, you definitely got to give it away. So Leo Shanahan did the surgery again, and he said, you know what? He said, it was a different part of your eye. He said, I'll give you one more shot. He said, but you've got to have, 8 or 9 months off. So in the space of 2 years, I played very little football. So sort of came back in 1980, and that was a pretty ordinary year, and Warren Ryan rang again, so I went to Newtown in 1981.
Not a bad year to go.
Yeah, well, that's where you go from being a boy to a man. You go to play with some very, very strong men and some great blokes and a different life, living in the western suburbs to moving into Newtown. And I loved living in and around the city. I've always wanted to be in and around the city as much as I grew up in West, and I love the Golden West, but, the city always excited me. So, yeah, Newtown was that's where you went from being a boy to a man. You're playing with Tom Rodonigus and a lot of the big name players that they had at that time, great blokes, and we had a great year. We went to a grand final.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you're up and at 'em, you are where you're meant to be. So you have some success there at Newtown. Leadership again, even amongst those type of blokes?
Not so much.
Or was it more about a learning experience for you?
Yeah, it was a learning experience, absolutely. Like I drove Tom Rodonigus to and from training every day. I was still living at Warrington, for the first half of the season, and Tommy was living at Blacktown, so I used to pick him up on the way through and drop him home after training.
Did you give you petrol money, or was it...
Nah. Nah. I learned how to drink, I know that. Yeah. And Ray Blacklock had come from Penrith with me. Ray passed away a few years ago, sadly, but Tommy's gone too.
Of course.
A lot of their old blokes have sort of passed away recently. But yeah, I was kind of like a kid amongst those blokes. And even today, if I'm amongst them, you still feel like a kid. Like it's just, yeah, it's just.
You slot back into your
slot
position.
Back into your, you keep your place.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were men. They were grown men, hard men too.
Yeah, and the best in the business, right? Tommy was,
yeah, well, it was a bit of
Australia and New South Wales.
It was a bit of a bits and pieces team. Warren had sort of cobbled it from a lot of other sides, and we were all sort of came together at that time, and it was a great group of blokes. We had an extraordinary year. Poor old Newtown, the grand final sent them broke. They went broke the next year, and we all had to go and find other clubs. That's how I ended up at the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and of course the Bulldogs, is where you are now in a different capacity, but that's obviously a part of your heart, where you had some success as well. And I don't imagine, like in my head, being a Rooster supporter, thank God you and Freddie came to the Chooks. It was a magical moment for us. It really was. And the footy we played was awesome. But in your heart, would it be Penrith, Newtown and the Doggies?
No. It's hard to say. It's like saying which child do you love the most?
Well, I can tell you right now. It goes on. It's a bit like tennis rankings.
Yeah.
It changes.
It changes.
But believe me, I do rank them.
Yeah, I heard a saying once that you're only as happy as your unhappiest child, and that's very, very true. So
that is a really good quote. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Bulldogs, I had 6 years there, but the first couple of years I was at the Bulldogs were in '83. I was playing first grade, and I fractured my neck. I lost the use of my left arm for about 8 or 9 months. And again, they said, that's it. You can't go back to playing. But stupidly, I did. Went back in 84, and after 10 rounds, and I was going pretty good, I broke my ankle. I was out for the rest of the season there. So I'd kind of gone through a bad trot injury-wise, and it limited the amount of football that I played. But thankfully, the last couple of years were all right, and I was able to retire from playing, and luckily walked straight into this role as a coach.
Mm. Yeah. Did you always know that that was going to be?
No.
Like you say, you don't plan for anything.
Didn't plan a thing.
Right.
Players I played with said, you're always going to be a coach.
Yep.
They sort of had that opinion.
Did you believe them when they said it?
No. I had no aspirations of being a coach.
Right.
No.
Did you look at the coach and go, oh, actually, I don't fancy that? Or
plenty of times. Plenty of times. There was plenty of times we were doing this, and if I was coaching, we wouldn't be doing this, you know.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd never planned anything. Honestly. It just sort of bumbled along from one thing to the next. So when I left Canterbury at the end of 85, we'd won 2 comps in a row, 84, 85.
You're the youngest coach to win a premiership, is that right?
Yeah, I was at the time. I don't know if that still stands.
I think it does.
Yeah, anyway.
A lot of old coaches winning stuff now, except obviously I've. Yeah.
Well, they're lasting a lot longer these days.
Yeah.
Most of them are.
Yeah.
They keep winning. But so at the end of 85, I went to South and had a year at South, my last year at South. And then Canterbury got me back to coach the reserve grade next year. And then out of nowhere, you become the first grade coach a year later. It's just ridiculous.
So when the doggies come knocking, or as my mum would say, the berries, because she's a mad berry fan. Yeah. When the berries come knocking and you go, yeah, I'll give that a go, or it's like, I've got nothing better to do, so I'll give
coaching.
it a crack. Yeah.
Yeah, like what happened was my year at South was quite telling because George Piggins was always very kind publicly about the contribution that I made there, and it was a great young team. We had, a young Mario Fennick and Craig Coleman and Ian Roberts and Les Davidson and David Boyle and all these great young kids. And I went there as a senior player and helped George with the coaching of the team and the football that we played. So part of me coming back to Canterbury was Warren Ryan filthy that I was over at South, working with them. So the old chairman, Barry Nelson, rang up. There was a copper. He was a mate of Dad's. He said, once you give that footy away, he said, you've had enough footy. He said, come and coach our reserve grade. He said, I always thought you'd be a coach. And at the time, I was working as a poker machine salesman.
Right. So playing on the weekends, training a couple of times a week, a full-time job.
My job was a poker machine salesman. That's what I was.
Yeah.
Football was your second job. That was, it was your love, your passion, but that was my second job. It was the best second job in the world. In those days, blokes worked on weekends and did odd jobs, or night jobs and all that sort of thing to make some extra money. Football was that. We didn't earn much out of it, but I was really lucky. When I played my last year in 86, I made my last payment on my first home at Greystone. So out of all the bumps and bruises and injuries I got, I owned my little house at Greystones. Yeah, $75,000 house at Greystones. And so I had that. And I was working and I didn't know any money and I thought I was the richest bloke in the world.
Yeah.
10 years later, I come to the Roosters and I met the richest bloke in the world.
Somewhere in all of this, you fall in love, you have a family. Like, what was that like for you being?
Yeah, it didn't quite happen like that,
okay.
Gus.
How'd it go? Tell us about it. And when you first met your wife, was it really awesome?
My wife and I worked together. She was the PA to our boss at the poker machine company.
Okay.
Yeah, and she used to type my reports. So I used to do feasibility studies for clubs and reports for clubs on how they should manage their poker machine installation, how many machines they should buy and how they should pay them off and what it'll do for their revenue and all that sort of thing. So I had to write up these reports and she'd type them up and make them look nice so I could go and present them to the clubs. There was a lot of dummy ones in there because I just had to go in and talk to her and get her to do my typing, even though I wasn't going to do anything. I used to throw them in the bin when I walked out.
You got half an hour.
Yeah, but we were sort of on and off for 7 or 8 years. And then by 96, that's when we started living.
You wore her down eventually, didn't you? You wore her down.
Yeah, stalking's a...
Yeah, I mean, it's frowned upon, but sometimes it works out.
Yeah, exactly. We were in different lives. Now, I was playing football and coaching football and doing all that, and she was living her life. But it kind of ended up marrying up in the end.
That's great. And how far and how quickly did kids come into your world?
Straight away. Yeah, so my first daughter was born in 97. A couple of years later, my son, and then 3 years after that, my youngest daughter, Abby. So
My youngest daughter's Abby too.
yeah.
Good names.
Brooke, Jack and Abby.
Yeah, well, I got a Jack.
Yeah.
I got a Jack and an Abby. You got an Ella in there too.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So Brooke's a lawyer. She finished uni. She did what I couldn't do. Jack works full-time in rugby league at the Cronulla Sharks.
Okay.
So he went through the junior rep system there and came out of that, and he now works there full-time in development in the women's program. And my other daughter's just doing her exams in her third year of psychology. So she's doing well as well. So.
Good on you. Well, your face lights up when
Yeah.
you talk about the kids.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
What's it like being
I'd be dead without
Dad?
him. Be dead without him. Yeah. I don't know where my life would have gone, and I didn't plan it. We didn't.
again? Well, we know you're not a planner.
No, we didn't plan that.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's how it happened, and and we've been together ever since. So I've known her since 1989, and we've been married since mid-90s.
Coming up to your 35th year together.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. She deserves a medal.
She does. Yeah, I don't know how she's put up with it.
How is it being a partner, do you think, to someone who's high profile like yourself, who, you're not afraid to say how you feel? That can also put a little bit of a target on you.
Yeah, look, funnily enough, none of that ever gets into the home. No one ever sees that at home. It's never, ever, like when I go home, that's not there.
Right.
Yeah, it's never has been. It's never, ever come through the front door. We don't read papers. I used to come home and say, Dad, you're on the news again tonight. Dad, you're on the TV again tonight. All that sort of thing. The kids didn't know what it was, and they don't care. And they know that I don't care about it. So it's never really entered our lives, to be honest. What I do during the day when I leave the house has got nothing to do with what I do when I come back home. So it's kind of like, it's not there. So it's
a discipline, though, isn't it, to sort of park it? Like I know coppermates of mine who, as they're driving home in that last kilometre, as they're weaving through the last street and they're parking up, they're just trying to decompress.
Oh, yeah.
And they just go, right, I'm taking this uniform off now.
My dad was like that. Like Dad, as long as I can remember, Dad left home at 6 o'clock every morning, and at 6:30 every night, the headlights come up the driveway. He was home for dinner at 6:30 every night on the dot. What he did in those 12 and a half hours, I learned later on, what was happening out there, but it never came home. His work never came home, and I'm pretty much the same. As the kids got older, particularly my son, because he was playing football and he was in the system at Cronulla there for a while playing junior reps, and he played with some very good players there. They won a couple of competitions. He kind of worked out at a younger age who I was or what I was in the game of rugby league.
Yeah.
But it's never affected him, I wouldn't think, and my daughters wouldn't know. Like, honestly, if they do, they certainly don't talk about it.
Yeah, you're just Dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're at the Doggies. You have some success there. As I said, the youngest coach ever to win a premiership. I'm going to lock that in, Eddie.
It's ridiculous, isn't it, when you think about it?
It's a pretty cool thing to have.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that like being basically a boy coaching men and having success like
Well,
that?
it was kind of like I played with just about everyone that I coached, most of them, and some of them were young players when I was a senior player at the Bulldogs. So your Langmacks and your Farahs and your Alchins and all these sort of blokes, they were young blokes that I played with at the Bulldogs before I left to go to South, and I played against them when I played South. So I knew all those blokes, and I played with obviously Terry Lambs and Mortimers and all those sort of blokes. And Warren was a great coach. I mean, he was there for 84, 85, 86, 87, so he went to 3 grand finals and won a competition. And that's what we just thought life was, playing footy, playing hard, drink hard, train hard, play hard, and win comps. That was our life.
It's the DNA.
That's what we did. So when it got to 88, it was kind of just like a continuation. It didn't take much coaching, until the end, obviously, but it was just a great year, and we went through and we won. It was ridiculous. Like 2 years earlier, I'm playing with them, and now I'm coaching them. The hard part of that year was Steve Mortimer's final year. He broke his arm at the back end of the season. He got on the field in the grand final, but he still had a broken arm. We played in the last couple of minutes.
The Mal Meninga sort of...
He had the big cast on his arm.
Yeah, I remember.
And then from there, it just went on from there. A couple of years later, I'm at Penrith, and it all happened again. And then after 4 years, my first 4 years, I went to 3 grand finals and won 2 comps. So someone thought I knew what I was doing and gave me the Origin job. And then the Origin went well too. Took on a life of its own, and that went really well. And then Super League happened.
Yeah.
And Super League was, without me knowing it, was the pathway into media. I became one of the spokesmen for the ARL in that particular war. And that's how the media work started. And I'm still doing it today.
With all that, and we're working through because of time here, you get to the Super League war and you decide to go ARL. Any thought going the other side?
No.
Right, so you knew exactly where you stood. That's why you're the spokesman.
Yeah.
And then from that, obviously, you move and you spend some time at the Roosters. What was that like?
Well, I went to the Roosters before Super League, so I was at the Roosters when Super League started. Just backtrack a little bit on that. We won the premiership in Penrith in 1991, and I think we'd have probably gone on and won 2 or 3 more after that.
You and the Raiders were just the
we were the good sides, but we were a good young side. And the Raiders were a champion team and regarded as one of the best ever. They just beat us in one grand final. We should have beaten them, and we beat them the next year. Our boys were pretty good and only going to get better. And we had the terrible tragedy of young Ben Alexander losing his life in a car accident. And it destroyed our club. It destroyed Greg. It destroyed his family. It was a terrible time for everyone.
Yeah.
And it took us, we still haven't recovered, but it took years for the club to recover. By 1994, football-wise, we were sort of back on track again. But I'd had enough. I was going to retire from coaching. I was going to go back to poker machines.
Oh.
So that was what I intended to do. And it was at that time, the middle of 1994, my manager got a call from the Roosters, which I said no, I didn't want to go to the Roosters. And
why didn't you want to go to the Roosters initially?
I was retiring.
Oh, so it wasn't the club, it was just I'm out of footy.
No. Roosters were struggling at the time, but I'd never had any affiliation with the Roosters. I'd never had any history with the Roosters. They were a champion side back in the 70s when Beatso and those were playing with them, but I'd never sort of known them. And I said, no, I'm going to retire. And I, in fact, told Panthers, this will be my last year. And then we made the decision that Royce Simmons was working for us in the club there. We get Royce coaching them straight away. So I sort of left with about 6 or 8 weeks to go in the competition. And then, through a number of connections and that, I ended up meeting Nick Politis and went to lunch with him, and we shook hands and decided to coach the Roosters. I never ever signed a contract with the Roosters. It was always a handshake with Nick, And it was funny, in 1994, Arthur Beetson was the caretaker coach. They'd sacked, I think, Mark Murray earlier in the year, and Beetso was the caretaker coach. So I'm going to coach them in 95. So for the back part of 1994, I'm coming to training and watching them train, and I'm going to the games to see how they get on and all that. So we go to the second last game, we go out to Parramatta, and they get beat 44-4 or something or other. And Beetso walks in after the game. He says, I quit. There's only one game to go. And I'm in the dressing room. Mate. And Nick turned around to me, he said, you're coaching next week, baby. I said, what? He said, you're coaching next week. We haven't got a coach. So I started in the last round of 1994.
How'd you go first game?
Yeah, we won. We beat the Gold Coast in the last game of the season. It was a funny day. But
good day?
Yeah, it was a good day. Yeah, I loved it.
What's Nick Politis like?
Oh, champion. Yeah. Next to my father, probably the greatest man I ever met. Yeah. Champion man. Yeah.
I love the fact that you just shook hands, looked at each other in the eye and just worked it out.
I had no intention of going. I had no intention of coaching.
So you turned up at the lunch thinking, this will be a nice lunch, I'll meet a nice person and I'll leave.
Yeah, I'd heard about
it. 3 hours later you were signed on. It's handshaked on.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some funny stories about that day, which I probably can't tell, but...
Feel free.
It was funny because I went down to meet him. He was in at William Street there, City Ford, yes,
City Ford says, yes, more often.
That's it, yeah. So I go down to meet Nick, and I go down, and I just picked up that day a brand new Holden Statesman from Holden at Penrith, who are our sponsors out there, a brand new Holden Statesman. And the reason I bought it was because there was a promotion on that you got a new set of Cobra golf clubs, Greg Norman Cobra golf clubs. So I bought the Statesman.
To get the free club.
And I turned up in this Statesman. I parked it at City Ford, and we went down the road to Nick's favourite lunch place, and we sat there and had a talk, and he told me what he wanted to do for the club. He'd just taken over as chairman in recent times, and they were sort of struggling to buy players, et cetera, et cetera. And we had a good talk, and he was, well, I loved him from the first moment, So we shook hands at the table and we walked back, and I had to get back to Penrith that night. So I'm sitting there and my car's not there. And I said, Nick, where's my car? He said, I don't know. So he said, they must have parked it downstairs. So anyway, we're sitting in the office and there's people running around everywhere, and I said, Nick, where's this car? He said, they're looking for it. They're looking for it. And I said, oh, yeah. So I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. So out we come, and he said, your car's gone, baby. I said, what? He said, we can't find it. He said, you'll have to drive this one. And up comes this brand new Ford LT. He says, you're going to have to drive it. And it's got yes number plates on it.
The Holden's toast. Ford's in.
I said, my new golf clubs are in the back of that car. He looked at me with a shocked look. Yeah, I didn't get the golf clubs back.
Oh, you never got the clubs?
He said, we'll have to get you some new rackets, baby. He said,
I love it. That's a great story. So your time at the Roosters is also bringing a couple of Panthers with you. You bring Singy.
Yeah.
You bring, obviously, Freddie, who ends up being
that doesn't
legend.
happen. That doesn't happen without the Super League War. Or it happened straight away because of the Super League War. It may have happened in time after time, but yeah, the opportunity to get them came about is because of the Super League War. Because when I was working for the ARL and running around signing players up to the ARL, I'd naturally gone out and signed a heap of Penrith players because I knew them to stick with the ARL and potential rep stars. And Brad Fittler was obviously one of them, and Matt Singh was one of them. And
yeah.
I'd sort of known them since they were teenagers, And then for some reason at the time, Penrith went and signed up with Super League. Now, I know why they did it, and I know who did it, but so the club was with Super League, but I'd signed all their players to the ARL, and that opened the way then through a court process to extract Brad Fittler and Matt Singh and bring them to the Roosters, which was huge for us.
Yeah.
So I think in 94 they ran second last or last in first grade and reserve grade. The next year we were beaten on percentages to make the top 8 in 95, and then Brad came in 96, and they've kind of been in the top 4 ever since.
Yeah.
So it's been quite extraordinary.
Yeah, unbelievable. I've still got the face mask from Freddie's last game, and every now and again, because I go out with Freddie now to the bush and do the mental fitness stuff, I sometimes wear it out there, and he's just like, mate, what do you still got that for?
Freddie's last game, we got all the kids. Ricky Stewart was coaching the team. We had our assistant coaches were John Cartwright, Dean Pay, Shane Flanagan, and Ivan Cleary were our assistant coaches. And we'd all had kids, and they were all about the same age. So our kids were a guard of honour for Freddie's last game.
Was that the one at the Sydney Football Stadium against Parramatta?
Yeah. And in that is Nathan Cleary and Jed Cartwright and Ricky Stewart. So all our boys, Kyle Flanagan, all our boys are in that photo on Freddie's last day heading out for that game.
Awesome.
It's extraordinary.
Pumped Parramatta, I remember that day. It was one of the great days.
Yeah.
We all had our cardboard cutouts.
Should have won the comp.
Yeah.
Should have won the comp.
Should have won the comp.
In 2004, we won the under-20s, the Jersey Flag. We won the reserve grade, and we were beaten 3 points in the first grade. Could have been one of the greatest years of all time.
Basically, 2000, 2002, 3, 4, those 4 comps, we won 1.
Yeah.
And I can understand losing the Broncos in 2000, but really upset me 2003.
Yeah,
the Panthers in the
out of nowhere it poured raining. And were just
and then 2004, they held up. How long are you going to be held up for before the try's given?
Hasn't.
Oh my God, he's still being held up today.
Yeah, he still hasn't got it.
Still hasn't got it down. I spoke to Bill Harrigan. I spoke to I don't think it was Bill, someone else about that ages ago. What's his name? Luke Politis. I did a do with him for his charity not so long ago. He said, Gus, I've won 3 comps.
No.
3 different teams, all against the Roosters.
Yeah.
I said, mate, I'm never doing nothing for you ever again.
Ever again.
So, Gussie, we haven't got a lot of time. So, you turn into the super coach, and I know you don't like that term, but that's the way it is. You've got media. Your life is rugby league. I feel, being with Maddie and MG for 10 years on the grill team on Triple M, now with Wendell Saylor, being around rugby league players, it's just a story that continually gives you off season, on season, so many stories. There seems to be this tribalism that no one's just happy to be just calm in the middle. You're either into something or you're against something. Does that take its toll on you being someone who's sort of the centre of that stuff?
The game that keeps on giving. I tell people it's a different planet today to what it was back in the 70s and 80s when I played, and I've lived it. I mean, I walked into Penrith looking for a game of football in 1976, as I said, and I've been in professional rugby league ever since. in some capacity, and virtually in all capacities.
Yeah.
Media, playing, coaching, administration, all the levels of the game. I've been involved with it in all that time, and I've seen the transitions from one era to the next and to the next, and I've watched the different demographic of our game change, the personality of our players change, society's changed in that time as well. Things are very different today to what they were, different to what they were 10 years ago. I mean, it changes so fast. It's a completely different planet. I mean, in the football, you can see the embryo of what we were playing back all those years ago. But to compare life today with what it was back then, even in football, is completely different. The life that they live today now as footballers, and first of all, the full-time professionalism, the training and everything that they need to go through, but the scrutiny that's on it, the pressure that's on it, the demographic of our game now, which is more than 50% Pacific Island and Polynesian players, with that has brought a number of different things to our game, all positive things, but it's certainly changed the demographic of our game and changed the way it's coached, the trains, the environment. But there is something innate in the NRL footballer that's common to all of them, and to play this game, to do what we do, to do what they do, to put themselves through what they do, the absolute inner toughness and drive and persevere in different levels. There are different levels of toughness and different types of toughness, but there is this one innate quality that they've all got. You're talking about the NRL player who is incredible, even if they've only ever played one game. I don't know if you've ever heard the stats, but there have been about 9,500 first-grade footballers since the beginning of time. 9,500. I would have thought there were more. Something like 1,400 played one game.
Right.
Wow. And over 6,500 played less than 50 first-grade games. So if you played 100 first-grade games, you're like in the top 12% of anyone who's played NRL, let alone the ones that first pulled on a boot. The percentage chance of a kid playing in the park becoming an NRL footballer is so minute, so small. Even when you get into the pathways programs and the junior rep programs, the percentages are so small of the bloke that's going on to be the NRL player, then to be a really good long-term NRL player. Then there's that other level, that great, legendary NRL player, immortal, which is such a small percentage. It's nearly generational, but we seem to be able to produce them. But amongst them all, and you've met them all, you say Johns and Gaia and Wassaila, you've got three blokes that are very different but very much the same, and you can see it in them. And there is an innate commonality about their drive and their toughness and risk-taking. Our game is risk-taking. It's physically demanding. It's emotionally demanding. It challenges your courage and your commitment. It challenges everything about you, and that's just the moments that you see. That's not the quiet moments when you're on your own. So they've all got that. That's the thing that's hard to explain, and that's the thing you see in a young footballer when you go out to scout, or you're watching kids, or you're trying to make a decision as to whether this kid might make it or that kid won't make it. I'm pretty good at telling you who won't make it. There are much better people than me that can tell me what a kid at 17 or 18 is going to look like when he's 23 or 24. I won't say that I've got that talent. I can say the one that's not going to make it. But that competitive streak, that competitive hardness, that I call it risk-taking. It's not really risk-taking, but it's kind of like they're scared, but they'll do it anyway. They won't admit to being scared.
And they'll do it over and over and over again.
And they'll do it knowing how much it's going to hurt. And that's the commonality through all generations. They all had that. They've all got that. And it's the one thing I think that even today I still look for in a kid. When I'm watching him and I look at his body language or I'm looking at him playing, it's those moments, either at training or in play, where you go, yep. And he's just got that competitive hardness. And they all deal with it in different ways. They all deal with the pressure in different ways and all that. But in the footballers that you've met, you can probably, and I see you nodding there, you can probably understand you can see it in them.
Definitely. Yeah. X factors. I see it in cricketers, I see it in AFL players, I see it.
The really good ones have just got that something special. I don't know what we call it, and no one knows what it is, but kind of when you see it and you feel it, you know what it is.
Yeah.
And it's just...
Well, you'll be too modest to think this, but you've got it. You do, mate. And you've done it in all different parts of the game. Our fast 5 questions is how we finish our podcast.
Oh, okay.
Have you got a favourite quote that you live your life by, or did you hear it one day and went, oh, yeah, that makes sense?
My dad's favourite quote to me was always, never let mugs upset you.
That's good.
And that's served me well over
I
a long
bet
period
you
of
it
time.
has.
So I'll give Dad the credit for that one.
Good on you. Well, you've already called him your hero too, right?
Absolutely.
He's your hero.
Yeah.
Favourite holiday destination, anywhere in particular?
Gold Coast.
Love the Goldie.
Been going there for 40 years. So
Okay. You got a place up there now, or?
I stay at the Sheraton Mirage every time I go up there.
Beautiful.
I went there, I was actually dating a girl back in the 80s, and she was from a very wealthy family, and they spent Christmas at the Sheraton Mirage. This is back in the early days when it was like, and I thought, I couldn't imagine ever being able to afford to come here and have a holiday. So I made myself save up and go there every year. Sometimes I didn't even have the money. I was broke, but I still made myself go, and I'd have to find it somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we've been going there as a family ever since.
Beautiful.
Go every year.
That's a nice story.
Yeah.
Are you a reader? Have you got a favourite book?
I read sporting books and I read crime novels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any particular one?
John Grisham, I like.
Oh, yeah, he's good.
Yeah.
Favourite movie?
A Few Good Men.
Oh, you can't handle the truth.
Can't handle
How
the
good's
truth.
that court scene?
What was the moral of that, of A Few Good Men?
What was the
Because I
moral?
remember this was part of a team talk back in Origin back in the day. It was one of
The whole movie or just that particular?
No, there was just a theme. When we used to go into camp back in the early 90s,
Yeah.
we would have they'd have a common movie that they were always playing on the bus or playing that would be on in the thing, and it might be a comedy movie, it might be something else, so and A Few Good Men was the movie of the day, and they were all watching this movie, and it was all you can't handle the truth and you can't handle the truth. And I knew all the players had watched it, and I said, what's the moral of the story, A Few Good Men? You can't handle the truth, all that sort of thing. And I said, they couldn't find those two men guilty of murder because they had followed an
the
order.
instructions, yeah.
They had been given an order, and they followed the order. And the reason with the US Marines is why they want people like that is because they've got to stand on a wall, and they're the ones we want to protect us. We don't want people that will be afraid or turn at the first bullet. And I kind of then married that into that's what we look for in an Origin player. And I've just described to you the things that I look for in a footballer.
Mm.
And it was kind of like, like even the court would realise that that's the man that we want to train and protect our country. That's why she says in the movie, he says, why do you like them so much? He said, because they stand on a wall and say, no one's going to hurt you tonight, not on my watch.
Yeah.
And that became the theme of our Origin team, that we would stand on a wall and no one was going to beat us tonight, not on our watch. And that was the type of people that we wanted in an Origin team. I just don't pick the best players or the most talented. I pick the people that I think can stand on a wall and say, not on my watch. And that became the theme of that Origin series for that year.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it was kind of like, so that's my favourite movie for that reason.
Yeah.
It was a great movie, but it was so much a part of our Origin theme that year. Years later, many years later, and I'd often talk about, those sorts of stories with the Origin players. Years later, when I come back to do Origin the second time, we're out in Sydney. I took the staff out for dinner in the city. We might have been at Star Casino. I don't know where we were. Laurie Daly comes up to me all excited because he's met these US Marines. There are these US Marines that are in Sydney. They're on their way back from Kuwait or somewhere, and he's met these blokes. So we go over and we have a drink with them, and we're with the leader, the general, and we're with these blokes that have just come back from overseas. They came into camp the next night and told us about their experience over there in the Middle East and what their code was, what their ethos was, and they spoke about some of the things they'd just been through in that time. They were on their way back through Australia on sort of furlough on their way back to America. They came in and spoke to the team that night, the night before the game, which was for Laurie, who'd been through it, what we'd been through in the early nights. This was huge, and it was great for us. And we won that night. We invited them to the game. They came out to Homebush and sat on the side. People didn't know who they were. We got these blokes on the sideline there. I'd got them passes and everything. They stood behind us. They were standing with us on the sidelines to watch the game. They were US Marines.
They were competition winners.
Yeah, they were US. Yeah, thought they were
something on the telly.
Thought they corporates who sponsored to get a trip on the field. Yeah, they were US Marines. And it was, and again, it became part of our series that dealing with those people. Not that I ever wanted to compare war to football,
Sure.
but there were themes in it that can galvanise and and that's when I talk about these special people that they are, our players, and they will think, so yeah, A Few Good Men's my favourite movie.
I love it. It's a great story. And favourite charity. So Shaw and Partners, who are supporting us on the podcast, have been a great supporter of my foundation, Gotcha for Life. They're giving every guest $10,000 to give to a charity of your choice.
$10,000?
$10,000. And that $10,000, where would you like it to go? And what do you think the people that you're giving it to will do with that $10,000?
Wow. Well, the charity that's very close to us at Channel 9 is the Mark Hughes Foundation for brain cancer. Yeah, so, Mark Hughes Foundation, if you can be so kind, that'd be nice.
That's, of course. I'll let him know when we finish up here. I'll send him a text that
Good on you.
You've just slotted 10 grand in his account. And we know what they're doing, of course, is
Absolutely.
coming up with, a cure.
Yeah.
And the more money that goes there, the better.
Yeah.
Gus Gould, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure, Gus Wallen.
Gus decided to give his money to the Mark Hughes Foundation, a foundation that all of us here at the podcast are right behind Mark Hughes and his team. Coming up next week's going to be another wonderful guest. If you're listening to this but you want to see the podcast, we have our own YouTube channel. The details are in the show notes. Look forward to seeing you next week.